Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna do a super casual Q&A. So I just wanted the backdrop to be nice and cozy as opposed to at my desk. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into some questions. I asked you guys what questions you had for me over on Instagram and also on Twitter, so I'm just gonna go through some of those. All right, so I'm gonna start out with this question from Andrea. She asks, how did you get into design? So how I got into design was basically in high school. I really liked art and I knew I wanted to do art in some sort of way, but I also was really more interested in like the practical side of art. And so I started taking classes in computer art and like just sort of exploring what graphic design was. Like I kind of understood it in high school, but not really. I knew it was like designing logos, but I didn't really understand much more than that. And so whenever I was looking at going to college, I was looking at different graphic design programs just to learn more about them. And I visited Penn State. I talked to a couple of the students that were in the graphic design program at Penn State, looked at some of their work, they kind of explained what it was all about, and from then on I was sold and I really wanted to be doing like what they were doing. Everything looked so cool and exciting, and so that's how I originally got into graphic design. And then after graduating Penn State with a graphic design degree, my first job after a couple of internships at marketing firms, my first like 9-to-5 real job was at a tech company, and so I got a little bit more into UI UX. Ashley asks, what has been the most valuable experience or benefit from your residency at Adobe? Wow, this is hard because there's literally so much. I feel like probably the best thing that I've got out of it so far has been the mentorship and just the accountability and relationships that I've built and people, like the people that have been able to help me. So if you don't know about the residency, basically Adobe will hire on young creatives for a year. It actually don't have to be young necessarily, but young in your creative career. And they will pay you a regular salary and you'll get mentorship, resources, opportunities, all that kind of stuff in order to pursue a personal project that you're really passionate about. And so I pitched a project about mindful design in the wellness space, and so that's what I'm working on now. I'm working on 4 case studies in that area and a ton of other things too. When I was first starting out in the residency, I thought that I was just going to be focusing on those things, but so many other things have gotten put on my plate, so many other great things. And so yeah, that's the other thing, is just opportunities, I think. And yeah, literally everything. This residency so far has been amazing, even though it's completely remote this year and there's no travel involved. I feel like I'm still getting so much out of it. So yeah, absolutely loving that. Any advice you'd give to graphic designers aspiring to change careers into UX design? So my advice would just be to practice and build your portfolio in the ways that you are interested in. So basically, what type of UX work do you want to get in the future? You should practice doing that type of work and putting that type of work in your portfolio, whether that's practice through just like personal projects where you don't have a client at all, or projects where you're working with maybe clients for free or for, you know, a discounted price since you're a beginner, or friends, family, things like that, unpaid internships. Yeah, I think learning by doing is 100% the most important thing that you can do. Like, yeah, you can like read about UX and take all these courses and watch all these videos, but if you're not actually doing it and practicing it and like building a process for yourself, then you're really not going to be able to move forward. So yeah, I would say building your portfolio in any way that you can. Take a look at case studies that you are really like, that really catch your eye and that you really love, and figure out how you can create something of that same caliber for your own portfolio. Okay, and Lana asks, how do you get more creativity? So I guess like, how do you practice creativity, or when you're in a slump, how do you get creative? For me personally, I get my creativity and inspiration from things that are mostly outside of design, or at least outside of graphic design and UX design. So I get a lot of my inspiration just from watching other types of creatives, and also just people, talking to people. So I would say like there are a couple YouTube channels that really inspire me that are completely unrelated from what I do, UX design. And yeah, I guess just kind of taking a break is what really inspires me. I feel like anytime I am stuck on like an idea, if I just step away from it and go outside and or do something completely different, read a book that's not about design, then that's when I actually get inspiration and get ideas. And so yeah, I would say if you're struggling for creativity and you are busy all the time working, especially in a creative career, then give yourself a break. But if you are someone who doesn't feel like they are creative, then I would read the book Creative Confidence. That one is a really good one if you feel like you're not creative and you don't know how to kind of get the creativity out of you. Adrian asks, how do you understand art and business at the same time? So I guess how do you balance those two things? Yeah, so that's tricky, but business is super important as a freelancer. If you're just looking to work for a company, then you don't really need to worry about the business side of things necessarily. But if you are going to get into freelancing, then you do have to learn about simple business strategies and ways to manage your business. And so there is a book I can recommend called Freelance and Business and Stuff by Jen and Amy Hood of Chutzpah Design. Yeah, they have an awesome book, and I believe they're actually turning it into an online course that might be out now too. So they're really an awesome resource for that. But on the other hand, if you're talking about more like in the UX space, how do you balance design goals with business goals? Then that is also something that's really important. And I think you just learn by talking to your client and really getting an understanding of what their business needs and goals are, and then balancing those with mindful practices and design strategies. Okay. Jan asks, which one is better to work for, large companies or smaller companies? So I guess I've worked for both. I'm working with Adobe right now, and it's awesome. They're obviously a huge company and they have tons and tons of resources, and I'm getting a really great salary from them, so that's great. And the people who work there actually really, really love their jobs. Like, I think that's a common misconception about big companies, is that people are just sort of grinding. But at Adobe, I've noticed that every single person I've worked with and come in contact with have been like just so happy and nice and clearly loving what they're doing. So that's really cool. That's definitely a pro for working for a big company, is just that everyone sort of has so many opportunities within the company. And I've worked in a bunch of small companies, including, I guess, my own company as a freelancer. And I think that there are definitely benefits to that too. Working for yourself, you obviously have tons of freedom. Working for a small company, you tend to be able to get to know everyone on the team and maybe climb up the ladder a little bit quicker, or at least get more responsibilities quicker. My first job out of college, when I started working at that tech company, again, I had no experience in UX, UI design, but since it was a pretty small company and a pretty small design team, I was able to learn on the job really quickly and just get thrown right into projects, which I think was really, really great for my growth. But yeah, I would say it's just really up to you if you want to work at a bigger company or a smaller company. And it's more about kind of the general vibe than exactly how big or small it is. So I would just, when you're doing interviews, make sure that you're really kind of getting to know who would be managing you and getting to know the team a little bit as much as you possibly can in the interview process, so that you know if it could be a good fit for you. Okay, this person asks, any advice on transitioning to UX from a different field? How do you get more hands-on practice? So I kind of already answered this from moving to graphic design, from graphic design to UX design. But if you're moving from a completely different field, so not really a creative design field, then I would definitely recommend getting some experience in foundational design. And I guess what I mean by that is like design principles, how to kind of train your eye to see good design and create good design, and that kind of thing. I think that's a really important foundation to have before you get into any more specific career. And so you could do that definitely just by practicing on your own and looking at what other people are doing, coming up with your own ideas, and just getting that hands-on practice. Or you could take a course, whether it's at university or just online, or anything like that. I think that's really important when you're transitioning from another field, is to learn from people who have more experience than you. So I would definitely recommend that. Sandrini says, hey, I love your work. Thank you. Can you please share some tips on how to start as a freelancer without a portfolio? So if you're just starting out and you want to get into freelancing and you don't have a portfolio, that could happen one of two reasons. Either you just don't have any experience yet, or you are coming from a company with a lot of NDAs, which means you can't show your work. So I would say if it's the case where you have NDAs and you have all of this great work that you want to be able to show, but you just can't put it in your portfolio, then a lot of times you can put together a deck that you show just during interviews. So that's definitely a way of showing your work. And so then a way to get more work would be to just pass around your resume. And if you've got some impressive companies on your resume, then you can probably get interviews and then show some of the work you did. But if you don't have any experience, then similar to what I was saying before, the first step is to get experience and build your portfolio. So I would say practice projects, and even if these portfolio pieces aren't like for clients, then they can still be really valuable if you sort of are honing your process and learning and showing what you can do. So because I get that question so much about how to build your portfolio, I'm thinking about doing some sort of like course or webinar series where I will take a small group of students per se who want to build their portfolio and go through a really in-depth practice project with them. And so if that's something you're interested in, I'm looking at like how to make it the most helpful for you. So I would love it if you would drop a comment or DM me on Instagram and just tell me that you're interested and what, if you have any ideas of what would really help you. Because yeah, that's definitely the number one question I get, is how to build your portfolio, and specifically for freelancing. So yeah, that is hopefully coming soon. Okay, another portfolio question. Should I be doing UI UX redesigns for my portfolio? So I would say it's not a bad idea to redesign things, but I would stay away from redesigning really popular apps and products. Like, don't redesign Instagram, don't redesign Twitter, unless you have like a really good idea of something practical. Like, these business models are already the way that they are, and it's going to be kind of tricky to look at something and see it for what it is when people already have such a hard context and like harsh rules about what it should be. So I would say if you're going to do UI UX redesigns, I would pick something that's not quite so popular and choose something strategically that you're going to be able to have an idea of how to improve it and prove in a way that you are improving it. So by doing research and testing and that kind of thing, how can you show why you made these decisions to change these certain things and redesign them? I would stay away from just redesigning the aesthetic itself and the UI. If you're looking to get a UI UX job, I would definitely focus just as much on the UX as you are on the UI. And so not just giving it a facelift, but actually thinking about the functionality and the features and the usability and things like that, that would make a better redesign in my opinion. Aditi asks, can you do both UI and UX in a company? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So if you're brand new to this field and you don't know the difference, UX is user experience. So it's really about the experience of using the app and the functionalities that are involved and how you get from point A to point B to point C, and sort of how someone accomplishes their goal and the structure of the app and how you move through it. UI is simply the interface, user interface. So it's what the screen looks like, what color the buttons are, what the layout is like, and all of that. Both extremely important, but they work together really well. And yes, I believe most jobs actually are both UI, UX, or at least if they're focused on UI, it would also be really helpful to have a little bit of a background or at least understanding of UX and the UX best practices. So yeah, you can absolutely do both, and I would recommend learning both. Ricky asks, from which websites can a new freelance designer get work and fixed income? In my personal opinion, for a freelancer, building your network is more valuable than going on a website and like hoping that people hire you. That's just my personal opinion. On the other hand, I did get a piece of work, a portfolio piece featured on Behance, and because it was featured, a lot of people saw it, and I did get reached out to for a couple different jobs, which was really cool. So Behance is definitely somewhere where you can get jobs. But overall, I think just building your network and putting yourself out there and doing good work so that you get referred is a much better strategy for having a fixed, reliable income source from freelancing than just kind of putting yourself out there on a website like Fiverr or all of those different types of sites. I clearly don't use them because I don't even really remember what they are, but you get the point. Just in my opinion, that doesn't work quite as well, but I'm sure it does work for other people, so you could definitely ask around if those are platforms you're interested in. I really like this question. I find the UX industry intimidating to get started in. Do you have any confidence tips? So I like this question so much because I felt the exact same way when I was transitioning from graphic design to UX. I definitely found it intimidating, especially when I started getting on Twitter and like following a bunch of UX designers that are like, thought leaders in their field and all of these things. I was so intimidated, and I think that's because there's just so much that goes into UX design, and there's so much that's learned on the job with experience that you're not going to feel confident until you start to get that experience. And so I would say even with myself, I don't have tons and tons of experience under my belt, but I'm working towards that, and I'm getting more and more confident as I do more projects. And so that's really all I would say in terms of gaining confidence, just by doing. So do practice projects, get feedback from designers. I have a Superpeer where you can set up or sign up for a session to get feedback from me on portfolio projects. So you can certainly do that to get my feedback. You can ask other people that you're interested in getting their thoughts on your work, and that will give you confidence because you'll then improve over time. So yeah, I would just say to get feedback and just keep practicing and connecting with people, because that is definitely how you're going to get confidence. Okay, this person asks, what are you doing after the residency? So I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing after the residency. It ends in, April. And so I still have some time. But basically the whole residency is so that I can build my portfolio and then do freelance work. And so I'm going to be doing freelance work in the wellness space. That's definitely probably half of my income and half of my plan for after the residency. The other half of the time I would ideally love to spend educating, whether that be through online courses or small groups of Zoom classes that I do live with people. I'm really interested in doing that type of thing. as well as continuing to make videos to educate and speaking and giving workshops and all of that stuff. Okay, Watermelon asks, which software is the best for UI design? So personally, I think Adobe XD is the best. Some people like Figma or Sketch, those are the main three. Personally, I like Adobe XD because it allows for so much animation really, really easily. So I really like to use prototyping and animation in my process, and so that's something that I could not go without. So that's why I use XD. It's extremely intuitive and easy to learn. I learned it so quickly. And yeah, that's one reason I really like XD. The other reason is just because I use a ton of the other Adobe Creative Cloud programs. I use Illustrator every single day. I use Photoshop almost every single day. I use Premiere Pro at least twice a week. And what else do I use? I used to use InDesign a lot. So basically I use a ton of their products already, and so I subscribe to the Creative Cloud, and so of course I'm just going to use Adobe XD, and yeah, I just absolutely love it. And as you can see, I've done a couple of tutorials using Adobe XD, and I'm going to be doing more in the future, so if you have questions about it, definitely leave those in the comments. Okay, this person asks, how do you find a good mentor? So I've gotten mentors in a few different ways. Some have come really naturally just through meeting people at jobs and really looking up to them, you know, becoming friends with them, and then just keeping in touch over time and reaching out about advice and things like that. Also, I've had mentorships within Adobe where I have a really specific thing I want to learn from them, and they were kind enough to set up sessions with me to help me learn those things and ask those really specific questions. I have my manager at Adobe is really like a mentor for me because she keeps me on track, and she's always asking me like what I am doing and how I'm being productive, and opportunities that I want and opportunities I've gotten and how they've gone and all of that stuff. So having someone that I'm accountable to is another form of a mentor for me that's extremely, extremely valuable, especially because she's also just like really supportive and never wants me to work too hard. And so yeah, that's just an awesome balance that I like to look for in a mentor, someone who pushes you to be your best, but also is really understanding and wants to support you as well. Yeah, and I think in terms of finding a mentor, I would say just you can find them on the job. So if you apply for a job, you could find a mentor that way. You could find one online. If someone that you follow is really inspiring to you, you could reach out to them and see if they're interested in doing a paid mentorship. Yeah, things like that. I think also just people who aren't necessarily like 10 steps ahead of you, but maybe just 1 or 2 steps ahead of you are also amazing mentors because they've been where you've been recently. And so if you're looking to do what they're doing, they might be able to support you, and there might be like a lot of give and take to a point where you don't even pay them. You just kind of become friends with them, and you can feed off of each other and help each other and give each other advice. I think that's an awesome way to have a mentorship as well. So yeah, just not being shy and reaching out to people and keeping conversations alive and things like that can be really helpful in getting a mentor. Oh, this is an interesting question. Eliza asks, when did you feel it was the right time to become a freelancer, and how did you create a network? So like I said, I was at that job at the tech company right after I graduated college. I was there for about a year, and I learned so much. And I realized that I wanted to work for myself, and I feel like I had learned everything I was going to learn at that company, so I was ready to move on, and I just wasn't excited about any jobs that I was seeing, and I always knew I wanted to work for myself eventually, and so it just seemed like a good time to start and try it out. So yeah, it definitely for me personally, I had savings built up and I was just in a financial situation where it was a safe choice for me to go off on my own and start this. I don't think that everyone is in that position, and I definitely recognize that there's privilege there for me being able to do that. And so yeah, I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but if you're able to and you've known you always wanted to, the earlier you start, the better, because like this person saying in their question, building your network is something that's really important and it takes time. So yeah, that's whenever I knew that it was time for me to do it. I had gotten some experience and still just felt that itch to work for myself and get the rest of my experience that way. And so yeah, basically what I did to build a network was I just reached out to anyone and everyone and told them what I was doing, and didn't act pushy or anything, but just let them know, hey, at the time I was focusing on graphic design and branding and web design. So, hey, I do these things. If you or anyone you know might need them, I'm trying to build, my freelance network, and I would love to do some work for you. And so, little clients started trickling in, and then I would go above and beyond for every single client, and then they would refer me to someone else. That's literally 100% how I built my network, was doing a really good job for the clients I did have so that they would refer me to new clients. And then, as you can imagine, the tree kind of branches off and your network grows. So I never did paid ads. I never did I really never did any type of marketing or advertising other than some social media. But other than that, I would really recommend just working on your network by doing good work and asking for referrals. Samantha asks, what did you study in school? Did you always want to do UX UI? So I mentioned this a little bit before. No, I went to school for graphic design and then kind of fell into UX UI in this tech job. But I would say the time that I realized that I really wanted to focus on UX design was just a couple years ago. Whenever I was running my own branding and web design business, I decided that I just wanted more UX projects. I felt like they were more challenging and rewarding for me. And I always come back to that being because whenever you're doing graphic design, you're designing something that people see. When you're doing UI UX design, you're designing something that people will use. And to me, that's just really kind of cool and empowering. And I just love the idea that I'm creating tools for people as opposed to just like something that they look at. I absolutely love branding and graphic design, and I'm not like throwing shade at all. But yeah, just for me personally, that's something that I was really drawn to, was designing something people can use. Bianca asks, any advice you'd give to graphic designers aspiring to change careers to UX design? So again, I touched on this earlier, but I think other than building your portfolio, I would say lean on your background in graphic design. There is so much of that you are still going to be using in UI UX. And so think about your process and how that can carry over to UI UX, and what technical skills you're going to be able to carry over and all of that, and figure out where your gaps are. So figure out what knowledge you're missing, what technical skills you're missing, what experience you're missing, and go after those things. And yeah, that would definitely be my advice for transitioning from graphic design to UX. All right, guys, that's all of the questions that I have for today. If you have any more questions that you want to ask, I'm sure I will eventually do a part 2. So just leave them in the comments below or send me a DM and I would love to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!